"Hi sir," the girl said, her voice trembling but steady. "My father had the same birthmark." The room stilled. The billionaire froze mid-sentence, a glass of scotch paused near his lips. Behind him, a sweeping view of Manhattan glittered through the penthouse windows. The wind howled faintly outside, but inside, it was so quiet the air itself seemed to hesitate. He turned slowly toward her. His pale eyes dropped to the girl's outstretched hand, pointing at the skin just above his collarbone where the top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone. A jagged, coffee-colored mark peeked through. He blinked once. Twice. "You said, what?" Her voice didn't waver this time. "My father had that same mark. The same shape. In the same place." His jaw tightened. The scotch glass tipped slightly in his hand, but he didn't drink. She stepped closer. "I think you knew him." Then she added, almost in a whisper, "I think you are him." The billionaire's fingers clenched around the crystal glass, veins tightening along the back of his hand. He opened his mouth. And then, the lights snapped out. Total darkness swallowed the room. A sound, quick footsteps, rushed behind the girl. She spun, breath catching in her throat. A door slammed. The billionaire was gone. 2 weeks earlier. Keisha Holloway wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand as she hunched over the sink in the small kitchen of Dale's diner. The clatter of dishes, the sharp hiss of fries hitting oil, and the low hum of country music filled the air around her. She'd been on her feet since 6 a.m., and her shift wasn't over for another 4 hours. Her sneakers were soaked from a dropped jug of sweet tea earlier, and her wrists ached from stacking too many plates too fast. Outside the cracked window, the Georgia sun beat down on the cracked pavement, and an old blue pickup sputtered by, dragging a cloud of dust in its wake. She wiped her hands on her apron and pushed through the swinging door into the diner. "Order up, Keisha," Dale barked from behind the counter without looking up from the register. She nodded, brushing a loose braid behind her ear. She was 19, slender and quiet, with skin the color of honey and eyes that flickered with thoughts she rarely voiced. Today, though, her mind wasn't on Dale or tips or the ketchup bottle leaking onto booth 3. Today was the 3rd anniversary of her father's death. Not that anyone here knew. Most of them didn't even know she'd had a father at all. To them, she was just the girl who walked 4 miles to work every morning, kept to herself, and left without a word. Her only close connection was her Aunt Laverne, who'd raised her after her father, Joseph Holloway, died in a hit-and-run no one ever solved. Keisha had never believed it was an accident. That morning, before walking to work, she'd opened the shoebox under her bed. Inside was the one photo she had of her father shirtless at the beach, holding her as a baby. Her tiny hand clutched his shoulder, and right above it, just below his collarbone, was a jagged, dark birthmark. She'd stared at that photo for 10 full minutes. Not because of the birthmark, but because of the man who was also in the photo. In the background, half out of frame, sitting under a striped umbrella. She'd seen his face 2 days earlier on TV. On the cover of Forbes. And on a digital billboard in downtown Atlanta. Meet Thomas Elridge, the billionaire with no past. That was what they called him. Self-made. Private. No family. No trace before he appeared in the tech world 15 years ago. But Keisha had seen the photo. She wasn't sure how he ended up in that beach photo from 2006. But she was going to find out. She didn't know where it would lead. Only that her gut told her there was something wrong. Something unfinished. Her father never talked much about his past. But once, just once, he'd told her, "If anything ever happens to me, baby girl, you look for the truth. Don't let them bury it." Keisha didn't know who they were. But she had a growing suspicion that one of them was now a billionaire in New York City. The next evening, she sat on the floor of her bedroom, laptop open, earbuds in. A cracked phone on the charger next to her buzzed with a notification. She ignored it. She was watching an old interview Thomas Elridge had done 5 years ago, the only long one he'd ever given. He was charming, composed, in control. Nothing about him seemed strange. Nothing, except when the host asked him about his childhood. He'd paused, smiled, said, "That's not really important." Then moved on. But in the background, Keisha noticed something. As he adjusted his shirt collar, the camera caught a split-second glimpse of something on his skin. Right at the same place as her father's mark. She froze the frame. Zoomed in. There it was. Not a shadow. Not a trick of light. A birthmark. Identical shape. Same spot. Her breath left her in a rush. A chill ran through her. Was this even possible? The next day, she called in sick for the first time in 2 years. She scraped together every tip she'd saved and bought a one-way bus ticket to New York. 12 hours later, she stood outside the sleek black glass building in Midtown Manhattan, staring up at the 38 floors above her, clutching her worn backpack and a file folder filled with photocopies, photos, and a scribbled plan that was barely holding together. She had no appointment. No credentials. Just a story no one would believe and a name no one dared to question. But she got in. A janitor took pity on her in the lobby. "I won't get fired if you don't get caught," he muttered as he led her into the service elevator. "Top floor. Go quick." And somehow, she was there. In the penthouse. Face to face with the man she believed might be her father. Or the man who killed him. Or both. "Hi sir," she'd said. And now, in the blackout, in the sudden silence, her breath catching in her throat, he was gone. In the dark, something buzzed. Not her phone. A strange noise, like a faint vibration, coming from the table behind her. She reached out. Fingers brushed something hard. Cold. Metal. A cell phone. Not hers. The screen flashed. "Unknown number, do not trust him." She stared at the message. Then the screen blinked again. "You're in danger. He's not who you think." And from somewhere deep in the penthouse, a voice echoed. A man's voice. Rough. Familiar. "Keisha?" She turned slowly. And saw someone standing in the shadows. Not the billionaire. But someone else. Someone with her father's face. Her real father's face. And she screamed. Keisha's scream bounced off the cold marble walls of the penthouse. The figure stepped into the sliver of emergency lighting now flickering along the floorboards. The light caught his face, and her legs nearly gave out beneath her. She stumbled backward into a glass coffee table, knocking over a sculpture she hadn't even noticed before. "No. No. That's not possible," she whispered, voice cracking. You're dead." The man took another slow step toward her. His face, lean, weathered, older now, was unmistakable. The same strong cheekbones, the deep-set eyes, the cleft in his chin. Her father. It had to be. But it couldn't be. She'd seen his body. She was 12 when the police came to the door. The body was so mangled they hadn't even let her see it. Aunt Laverne had cried for a week straight. They'd buried him in a pine coffin with no viewing. "Keisha," the man said again, his voice soft. "It's me. I'm here. But we don't have much time." She felt her back press against the wall. Her mind screamed to run, but her feet wouldn't move. "You died," she said. "You died in 2022. Hit and run." "I remember." He shook his head. "That body wasn't me." He let that sink in. Keisha's fingers gripped the strap of her backpack so hard her knuckles went white. "Then who the hell was it?" she snapped. "What is going on?" Before he could answer, a door behind him slammed open. Bright lights poured in. Armed security, 2 of them, stormed in with guns drawn and flashlights slicing through the dark. "Hands up," one of them barked. "Step away from the girl." "Wait," Keisha shouted. "He's my..." The man, her father, raised his hand slowly, eyes locked on her. "Don't trust anything Elridge tells you," he said, voice urgent. "I'll find you again. I promise." Then he turned and bolted through the side hallway, disappearing before the guards could reach him. "Freeze," one of the guards yelled, but the man was already gone. Keisha stood in the center of the room, chest heaving, the world tilting under her. One of the guards turned to her, lowering his weapon slightly. "Are you hurt, miss?" She shook her head. "No. I don't know." The other guard touched his earpiece. "We've got a breach on the top floor. Possible imposter. Mr. Elridge is not accounted for. Repeat, Elridge is missing." And just like that, the billionaire who she thought might be her father vanished. But the man she knew was her father, he was alive. The world she thought she understood cracked open, and all she had left was the dizzying fall into something deeper. 2 days later, Keisha sat in a cheap motel off Route 27 in Queens, staring at a whiteboard she'd drawn on the back of a pizza box. Photos. Notes. Red pen connecting names. She hadn't gone home. Couldn't. The moment the building went on lockdown, she'd slipped away while security scrambled to find Elridge. Somehow, no one had stopped her. The phone she'd found on his table, the one with the messages, was still in her backpack. The messages had stopped after that night. But the last one still haunted her. "He's not who you think." She tried to piece it together. Her father was alive. Or someone who looked exactly like him was. Elridge had the same birthmark. The same strange past. And yet, her father had told her not to trust Elridge. The contradictions made her head hurt. A knock rattled the thin motel door. She jumped. Slowly, she crossed the room and looked through the peephole. It was Aunt Laverne. Keisha's heart dropped. She opened the door. Her aunt's face was strained, lips tight, eyes puffy from tears. She was holding a folded newspaper. No words. Just a look. "I told you to stay out of this," she said finally, stepping into the room. Keisha closed the door behind her. "How did you find me?" I know you, Laverne said. And when I saw this. She unfolded the newspaper and tossed it on the bed. Front page, Billionaire Elridge missing after attack in penthouse, young woman sought for questioning. Below the headline was a grainy photo of Keisha, mid-step, caught by a security camera near the elevator. She felt sick. They think I hurt him, she asked. Laverne gave her a long, level look. No. I think they're hoping someone does it for them before the truth gets out. What truth? Keisha snapped. That he's my father? Laverne sat on the bed and sighed, as if she'd been carrying a weight too long. Your father, Joseph, he was a twin. Keisha blinked. What? They were identical, Laverne said. Born 20 minutes apart. But they weren't raised together. Your grandmother gave one up for adoption. Keisha dropped into the motel chair, stunned. You never told me. Your father didn't want you to know, Laverne said. He didn't want you tangled in that man's life. Elridge, Keisha whispered. Laverne nodded. They reconnected in their 20s. But it didn't go well. That man, he'd already started changing his name, building something secret. Joseph thought he was dangerous. He warned him once. Then he disappeared for 5 years. Keisha's voice was a whisper. So what happened? I don't know. All I know is, one day your father came home shaken. Said he'd seen things he couldn't unsee. Told me if anything happened, I had to protect you. And then he died. No, Laverne said. Then he ran. That crash? That body in the car? That was staged. I helped him disappear. Keisha's mouth fell open. You helped him fake his own death? Laverne didn't blink. I raised you to survive. Not to chase ghosts. But now, you've stirred up something deep. Keisha sat frozen. The puzzle was changing again. 2 men. Same face. Same blood. One raised in shadows, one in light. And now, one was missing. The other was hunting her. That night, as Keisha lay on the motel bed, the stolen phone buzzed. No number. Just one message. He's close. And he's watching you. She ran to the window and looked out into the empty parking lot. And saw a black SUV parked across the street. Its headlights off. But the engine running. Keisha ducked back from the window, heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. She kept the curtain parted just a sliver and watched the black SUV across the street. Still parked. Still idling. Someone was in there. Waiting. She stepped away and grabbed her phone. It was nearly dead, just 6% battery, but the motel charger barely worked. The burner phone she'd taken from Elridge's penthouse was tucked into her back pocket. Laverne stood by the door, already pulling her purse over her shoulder. We need to leave. Now. Keisha looked back out the window. You think they're here for me? They're not here for pizza, Laverne muttered. That man, Elridge, or whoever he really is, he's got people. Real money. Real reach. If he wants you gone, you won't see it coming. But what if it's him? Keisha asked. What if it's my dad again? Laverne froze for a breath too long. It's not. He wouldn't risk drawing attention. Not with everything at stake. Keisha stared at her. You're not telling me everything. No, Laverne said. I'm not. Because I was hoping to take the worst parts to my grave. But if we want to get ahead of this, we don't have time to argue. So decide. Run, or find out who's in that car. Keisha's mind spun. She wanted answers. But she also didn't want to die in a motel off Route 27. Still, she'd come this far, and she'd already lost the chance to speak to Elridge before he vanished. This might be her only shot at a lead. I'm going out there, Keisha said, her voice flat. Alone. Laverne stepped in front of the door, blocking her. The hell you are. I have to. If they want to hurt me, they would have done it by now. Let me try. 5 minutes. If I don't come back, you leave. Call the press. Tell them everything. Laverne didn't move for a second. Then, slowly, she stepped aside. 5 minutes. Keisha nodded, slipped on her hoodie, pulled the drawstrings tight, and left through the side door. The cool night air hit her like a slap. She crossed the narrow lot, gravel crunching under her shoes. The SUV didn't move. She stopped 10 feet away and raised her hands. Hey, she called out. You've been watching me long enough. You want something? Say it. A pause. Then the driver's door opened with a heavy groan. A man stepped out. Tall. Wide-shouldered. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. Close-cropped hair. A scar across his eyebrow. He wore a black jacket and black jeans, and his hands stayed visible. Keisha Holloway, he asked. Who's asking? He reached into his jacket slowly and pulled out a badge. Private investigator, Gabriel North. Not a cop, he said quickly. But not the enemy either. Keisha stared at the badge, not relaxing. Who hired you? I work for someone who used to work for Elridge, he said. They sent me to find you. Protect you, if I could. Protect me from what? Gabriel scanned the lot, then looked her straight in the eye. From Elridge himself. She blinked. So, you do believe he's dangerous? I know he is, Gabriel said. And he's not who the world thinks he is. But you already know that, don't you? Keisha stayed quiet. Gabriel gestured to the SUV. Come with me. I'll show you things your father never could. Things he kept from you to keep you safe. My father, Keisha said, voice sharp. You saw him? You know he's alive? Gabriel looked away for a second. Yes. But not for long if we don't move. Keisha glanced back at the motel, then back at him. Where are we going? To someone who's been watching Elridge for a long time. Someone who has proof. Keisha hesitated. Then she opened the SUV door and got in. Gabriel climbed in on the driver's side, pulled out onto the road, and drove east without a word. 15 minutes passed in silence before Keisha spoke again. Tell me what you know about Elridge. Gabriel's eyes stayed on the road. He's not a tech genius. He didn't create anything. He stole it. And he erased the people who helped him do it. Erased how? Dead. Missing. Paid off. Your father was one of the last to stand in his way. Keisha stared at the windshield. Why didn't he come back sooner? Why didn't he tell me the truth? He was protecting you, Gabriel said. Elridge had eyes everywhere. If your father came back, he'd lead them to you. Then why now? Gabriel paused. Because Elridge made a mistake. And for the first time in years, your father saw an opening. They pulled off the highway into a narrow road flanked by trees. No signs. No streetlights. Gabriel slowed as they reached a rusted gate, then punched in a code. The gate opened. Behind it, a small cabin sat in the clearing. They parked. Who lives here? Keisha asked. Gabriel gave her a look. Not who. What? They got out. The cabin looked abandoned, but when Gabriel knocked, the door creaked open immediately. A small woman in her 60s stood behind it. Thin. Pale. Sharp-eyed. This her? She asked. Gabriel nodded. Keisha Holloway. The woman stepped aside. Come in, then. I've got 30 years of secrets and 20 minutes of patience. Keisha walked into the cabin. Maps, files, photographs lined the walls. Red string connected pins across locations around the country. Faces. Names. Some circled in red. Others crossed out in black. And there, near the center, was a photo of Elridge, his eyes red with a Sharpie X. Who are you? Keisha asked. The woman smiled faintly. Someone who used to call your uncle family. Keisha blinked. My uncle? Elridge, the woman said. Or as I knew him. Eli. Gabriel closed the door. Time to learn the real story, he said. Keisha stepped closer to the wall. Her fingers hovered over a black and white photo of two boys standing in front of a foster home. One was her father. The other? She touched the second face. Eli and Joseph Holloway, the woman said. Twins. But only one of them made a deal with the devil. And then. A loud crack shattered the quiet. The window exploded behind them. Gabriel tackled Keisha to the ground as the cabin filled with smoke. Voices shouted outside. Boots pounded toward the door. Go, the woman screamed. Take her. There's a tunnel under the floor, now. Keisha's ears rang as Gabriel pulled open a trapdoor and shoved her down into the darkness. Above them, the front door burst open. A man's voice yelled. We want the girl alive. Then a flash. A bang. And everything went white. Keisha's ears were still ringing when she landed hard on the cold dirt floor below the cabin. Gabriel dropped down after her, slamming the trapdoor shut above them. A muffled explosion rocked the ceiling, sending dust cascading into the tunnel like gray snow. He grabbed her arm. Move. Now. She scrambled to her feet and followed him, breath ragged, legs shaky. The tunnel was barely high enough to stand upright, lit only by a few flickering bulbs strung along the ceiling. It smelled like damp wood and rust. Behind them, muffled shouting echoed from above. The cabin was under siege. They ran. Gabriel led her around a sharp corner and down a narrower corridor. It looked like it had been dug by hand, old, desperate work. Keisha clutched the burner phone in her pocket as they moved. She kept thinking about the last message. He's watching you. When they reached a steel door at the end of the tunnel, Gabriel paused and punched in a long code on a small panel. The door hissed open. They stepped into a concrete room, cool and dry. No windows. One bare bulb hung overhead. It looked like a storm shelter. But inside, on shelves lining the walls, were boxes. Hundreds of them. Gabriel closed the door and bolted it shut. Keisha turned in a circle, trying to take it all in. What is this place? A memory hole, Gabriel said. This is everything that never made it into the official story. All the things your uncle erased. This is what your father died to protect. Keisha's stomach twisted. He's not dead. Gabriel looked at her, grim. If they caught him tonight, he might be. Keisha closed her eyes. She pictured that moment in the penthouse, her father's face in the shadows, the panic in his voice. And now this place, this bunker full of evidence, was all that might be left. Why are you helping me? She asked. Gabriel pulled a manila folder from one of the boxes and handed it to her. Because 5 years ago, I made a mistake. I helped Elridge bury a man alive. Keisha's throat went dry. What do you mean? I thought your father was crazy. I didn't ask questions. Just did what I was paid to do. Until I saw what was really going on. By the time I tried to fix it, it was too late. She opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos, grainy shots of her father, taken from a distance. Notes in the margins. Schedules. Names. One name appeared again and again. Project Mirror. What's Project Mirror? She asked. Gabriel sat on a bench and ran a hand over his face. It started as biometric software. Facial recognition, DNA indexing, predictive behavior models. Cutting edge. Your father and Elridge were working on it together when they reconnected. But Elridge, he had bigger plans. Bigger how? He wanted to use it to replace people. Keisha froze. Gabriel went on. Not literally. But socially. Digitally. He wanted to erase real identities and insert false ones, deep fakes, financial reroutes, synthetic DNA records. Total manipulation of the system. Your father tried to shut it down. Keisha stared at him. And that's why he was targeted. Not just him. Anyone who knew. Gabriel stood and opened another box. Inside were more folders, labeled with names. All of them crossed out. Except one. He handed it to Keisha. She opened it, and gasped. It was a file on her. Photos of her walking to school as a teenager. Her job at Dale's Diner. Her social security number. Medical records. Every part of her life, documented. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Why me? Because of your blood, Gabriel said. You're the only genetic proof Elridge can't erase. You're a living match. She stared at him. You mean if someone tested our DNA? They'd see it. They'd know he lied about everything. Keisha stepped back, the file clutched against her chest. So he's not just hiding from me. He's trying to destroy the evidence. Gabriel nodded. And tonight wasn't a scare tactic. It was a sweep. That woman in the cabin, she was our last open source. Keisha looked at the bolted door. What happened to her? Gabriel didn't answer. She knew. He grabbed a backpack from a metal locker and started packing supplies. We have to move. If we stay here, they'll trace the breach. Keisha looked around the room. What do we do with all this? Gabriel zipped the bag. We take what we can. Then we torch the rest. If we leave it, they'll twist it. He tossed her a flash drive. That's the core data. Your father encrypted it with a code only you can solve. Why me? Because you're the only one he trusted. Keisha held the drive tight in her fist. For the first time, the weight of it all settled fully in her chest. This wasn't just about finding the truth. It was about surviving it. Gabriel handed her a burner phone. If we split up, don't call anyone you know. We'll meet in 48 hours at the address I text you. He paused, then added, don't let anyone follow you. Keisha nodded. Her mouth was dry. Her legs felt hollow. But her heart was steel now. She took one last look at the evidence room, this strange museum of hidden lives, and followed Gabriel into the tunnel leading out the back. They emerged into the woods, miles from the nearest road. By the time dawn touched the sky, Keisha was alone again. But not unarmed. She had the drive. She had the truth. And for the first time, she had a name for what Elridge had done. As she started walking toward a road she couldn't see, her burner phone buzzed. New number. No name. The message read, I warned you to stop. You didn't. Now someone else has to pay. Attached was a blurry photo. Her aunt. Bound. Eyes wide with terror. Behind her, a man's hand rested on her shoulder. A hand with a jagged, familiar birthmark. Keisha stopped walking. The woods were quiet around her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just turned around and started walking back the other way. Straight toward him. Straight toward the man who shared her blood, and might take everything else. Keisha didn't hesitate. She turned off the burner phone, snapped it in half, and tossed the pieces into the brush. If Elridge wanted her, he wouldn't need to trace her location. She was coming to him. The sun was rising, throwing long shadows across the trees as she walked back toward the highway. Her legs were stiff, her body sore, but her thoughts burned like coals, sharp and bright. Her aunt's face haunted her. Not just the fear in it, but the way she looked straight at the camera, like she knew Keisha would see it. Like she wasn't begging for rescue, just for Keisha to survive. But Keisha couldn't survive if Laverne didn't. She reached a small gas station off a back road around 8 a.m. The clerk eyed her warily as she walked in covered in dirt, but said nothing. She bought a pack of mints and asked to use the bathroom. Inside, she locked the door and pulled the flash drive from her sock. She stared at it in her palm. Her father's message. His proof. Everything he gave up: his name, his life, maybe even his soul to protect. She opened the back of the toilet tank, wrapped the drive in a paper towel, and wedged it behind the waterline. Then she wrote a note on the toilet seat lid in permanent marker. If you find this, send it to 134 West Amber Street, Apartment 2A, Atlanta, Georgia. Don't open it. Just trust me. It wasn't a perfect plan. But it was something. She left the bathroom, bought a burner phone from the rack near the counter, and paid in cash. Then she went back outside, sat on the curb, and powered it on. No GPS. No apps. Just a keypad. She typed in the number that had sent her the photo. It rang once. Twice. Then connected. Silence. She spoke into the quiet. It's me. You got what you wanted? I'll come to you. Still nothing. Then, the faint sound of breathing. Not Elridge. A woman. And then a voice, clipped, cold, familiar. She's still alive. For now. I want proof. A click. Then another photo arrived. Laverne, blindfolded. Same room. Different angle. Keisha swallowed. Where do you want me? The woman's voice again. The Northmoor compound. Upstate. Midnight. Come alone. Then the call ended. Keisha stared at the screen. Northmoor. She knew the name. Her father had circled it in one of the pages Gabriel showed her. It was listed as a test site. No one had explained what that meant. She hit the road again, sticking her thumb out on the highway like it was decades ago. After 3 cars sped past, a fourth, a dusty white Ford van, slowed down and pulled over. The driver leaned out. Where you headed? North, she said. As far as you'll take me. By 5 p.m., Keisha stood outside the chain-link gate of the Northmoor compound. It was surrounded by trees and barbed wire, the perimeter patrolled by security in black uniforms with no insignia. The building itself was long, low, concrete, like a bunker half sunk into the ground. She wasn't trying to sneak in. She walked up to the gate and raised her hands. 2 guards rushed her, grabbed her arms, searched her quickly, and cuffed her wrists behind her back. One of them whispered something into a radio. A minute later, a black SUV rolled out from behind the building and stopped in front of her. The back door opened. Elridge sat inside. He was dressed in a crisp, navy suit. No tie. Collar open. His hair was neatly combed, and his face was calm. Not angry. Not surprised. Just pleased. Get in, he said. They uncuffed her and shoved her inside. As the SUV rolled toward the building, he studied her like a teacher waiting to see if a student had done her homework. You've grown, he said, finally. Keisha didn't look at him. I'm not here for small talk. No, you're not, Elridge agreed. You're here to trade yourself. Brave. Stupid, but brave. She turned to face him. Where's my aunt? She's safe. For now. He paused. But that depends on how cooperative you are. Keisha clenched her jaw. What do you want? He smiled faintly. Not what. Who? The SUV rolled to a stop in a wide underground garage. The door opened. Keisha was pulled out, her arms restrained again. Elridge stepped out behind her and nodded toward the guards. Take her to processing. They led her through a maze of sterile white halls lit by harsh overhead lights. Every few feet, cameras tracked their movement. They passed doors marked with codes she didn't understand. Behind some of them, she heard murmurs, soft mechanical sounds, even crying. They pushed her into a room with nothing but a chair, a steel table, and a large, one-way mirror. Elridge followed, closing the door behind them. He sat opposite her, folded his hands, and said nothing for a long time. Then finally, you know what Project Mirror really is? Keisha didn't answer. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small remote. Hit a button. The wall behind her flickered to life. It was a screen, showing her. But not her now. Her in the diner. Her on the bus. Her walking into the penthouse. The footage flicked again. And this time, the girl on screen wasn't her. She looked like her. Moved like her. But her eyes were wrong. Flat. Glazed. Keisha's blood ran cold. That's not me, she whispered. No, Elridge said. It's your double. We've had her in rotation for 2 years. Testing social infiltration, emotional manipulation, response mimicry. You'd be amazed how quickly people accept what they're told is real. He leaned closer. But no matter how perfect the copy, there's always one thing that gives it away. Keisha stared at him. The birthmark, she said. Elridge smiled. Exactly. He stood and walked to the door. Now it's your turn. For what? To finish the test, he said. We need the original to validate the final phase. The clone was good. But you? You'll make it perfect. The door opened. Keisha surged to her feet. Where's Laverne? She demanded. Let her go. Elridge didn't turn around. You'll see her. Soon. As he left, the guards returned. They grabbed Keisha's arms and dragged her down another corridor. At the end of it was a glass chamber glowing with pale blue light. Inside stood herself. The clone. She turned, smiled, and said in a perfect voice. Hi Keisha. I've been waiting for you. Keisha's breath caught in her throat. She stared through the glass at the girl inside the chamber. Same skin tone. Same height. Same exact braid falling over her left shoulder. Same scar on the cheekbone from where she fell off her bike at 9. Same everything. Except, the eyes. They were too still. Too polished. No flicker of thought. No hesitation. The clone smiled again. Don't be afraid, it said, voice sweet, measured, and wrong. I'm here to help. You and I are very much the same. Keisha backed a step away from the glass. What are you? I'm the version of you that obeys, it replied, tilting its head slightly, like a curious bird. I learn quickly. I adapt even faster. I've lived your life better than you have. Keisha's hands curled into fists. You're not me. I am the part of you that he can use, the clone said, stepping closer to the glass. And now he doesn't need both. The guards moved beside Keisha, but she spun on them. Don't touch me. They paused, waiting. The intercom crackled overhead, and Elridge's voice filled the room. She's right, men. Let her choose how this goes. Keisha looked up at the ceiling. Let my aunt go, and I'll do whatever you want. There was a pause. Then, bring her in. A moment later, another set of guards led Laverne into the room. Her arms were bound, her face bruised. But she was alive. Keisha ran to her, but they didn't let them touch. Just held them facing one another across 3 feet of empty space. Laverne's lips trembled. Keisha, baby, you should have run. I couldn't. Laverne looked past her to the clone, then to the glass chamber. That's what this was about. All along. Replacing you. Keisha nodded. But why? Elridge's voice came again, soft now, almost smug. You're the missing key. My prototype was good, very good, but it lacked emotional fidelity. Your memories, your instincts, your pain, those can't be replicated from files. We need to extract the real you. Keisha's stomach turned. What does that mean? In simple terms, he said, I'm going to upload your mind. The lights above flickered. A metal door at the side of the room slid open, and a new machine, large, circular, ringed with blinking lights, rolled in on motorized wheels. It looked like a CAT scanner had been reimagined by someone with a god complex. The clone stepped out of the chamber, eyes fixed on Keisha. Let's begin, it said, and walked toward the machine. Keisha turned to Laverne. I'm going to get us out of here. I promise. No, Laverne whispered. You fight this. Do not give them what they want. Keisha's hands shook. If I don't, they'll kill you. Laverne leaned in, voice sharp. They're going to kill me anyway. But they can't kill you. Not if you make this cost them everything. Keisha turned back toward the clone, now standing calmly in front of the machine. I can't let them win, Keisha whispered. You won't, Laverne said. But you need help. Keisha's head snapped toward the ceiling. Elridge, she said loudly. Let's make a trade. Silence. Then a soft chuckle crackled through the speakers. Go on. You want what's in my head? She asked. I'll give it to you. But not like this. Oh? I'll walk in there willingly. I'll sit in that machine. No fight. No resistance. But you let her go. Out of the compound. You give her a car. You don't follow. Another pause. Then, maddeningly, he said, deal. The guards looked to the camera in the corner. A red light blinked. One of them walked to Laverne and cut the ropes binding her wrists. She nearly fell forward, but caught herself. The guard handed her a key fob. Gray car. East Gate. No escort. If you deviate, we shoot. Keisha turned to her. Go. Now. Laverne grabbed Keisha's hands. I love you. I love you too, Keisha said. Run fast. Laverne didn't waste another second. She bolted. The guards didn't stop her. The heavy door closed behind her. And Keisha was alone again, with her copy. With the machine. And with the man behind the curtain. She walked forward. Her clone waited, eerily silent. The machine hissed, hydraulics lifting the scanner into position. Keisha stepped under it. The clone stepped into the scanner beside her, like a mirrored ritual. The two of them, side by side. Keisha stared at her reflection. Then the machine buzzed to life. She braced herself. But instead of sliding into the scanner, she reached into her waistband and pulled out a shard of broken glass she'd hidden from the cabin escape, the one she never got to use. She jammed it into the clone's neck. The clone staggered backward, blinking in confusion. No scream. No blood. Just a faint mechanical whine. Keisha screamed like hell. The clone collapsed. Guards burst in. Keisha grabbed a steel tray from the nearby counter and slammed the first one in the face. The second tackled her. But she hit the lights on the console. Red alarms flared. Elridge's voice barked something unintelligible over the intercom. The machine began to whine, power surging wildly. Keisha ducked under the scanner, crawling for the panel. She yanked open the wiring and found the motherboard, the drive Gabriel had warned her about. She pulled out the flash drive from her pocket, the real one, and slammed it into the port. The machine shrieked. The screen flickered. A cascade of data began to upload. Unlocking mirror code. Identity conflict detected. Override signal triggered. Keisha smiled through the pain in her ribs. Outside the room, more guards poured in. And from above, a massive blackout hit. The entire compound went dark. And in that moment of confusion, someone grabbed Keisha's arm. Dragged her through a side panel. A voice in the dark. "You weren't supposed to live," the voice whispered. She turned her head, and saw him. Her real father. Bloodied. Limping. But alive. "I told you I'd find you again." And together, they ran. Behind them, the compound exploded into chaos. The night air burned her lungs as she ran. Keisha's heart pounded so hard it hurt. Her legs were shaking, her side throbbed where the guard had hit her, and blood was trickling from a cut on her cheek, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her father, Joseph Holloway, flesh and blood, held her wrist tightly as they plunged through the woods behind the Northmoor compound. Behind them, alarms howled. Dogs barked. Voices screamed through bullhorns. Flashlights scanned the trees like sniper sights. But the darkness was on their side. For now. Over this ridge, her father hissed, ducking low as they reached a thick patch of pine. They dropped to the ground, hidden under a curtain of branches. Keisha pressed her back to the earth, gasping, heart screaming in her chest. Her father peered through the trees, watching the shadows flicker with movement. He was thinner than she remembered, grayer, eyes sunken, but still strong. Still him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, breathless, Keisha said, "You came back." Joseph looked at her, his expression strained. "I never left." She blinked, tears suddenly rising. "You faked your death. You let me think you were." "I had to," he said quickly. "If Elridge knew I was alive, he'd use you to find me. I watched from a distance. Your aunt helped. I couldn't contact you. Not until now." She looked away, her chest tight with something worse than anger. Betrayal. Confusion. And still, relief. "Why now?" she whispered. "Because the last phase of Mirror was happening. Once he finished your clone, he'd have no use for the original." His voice dropped. "You were next." Keisha clenched her jaw. "I saw it. It looked like me. Moved like me. But it wasn't me." "No," Joseph said. "Because it doesn't have your choices. Your fear. Your soul." She stared at the flash drive in her pocket. "I got the data in. I uploaded it into the machine." His eyes widened. "You did?" She nodded. "I overloaded the system. I think it's all in there now, whatever you gave Gabriel. It started some kind of cascade. I saw the system rejecting the clone." Her father let out a shaking breath. "Then we still have a chance." They crawled deeper under cover until they reached a dry creek bed, where he'd stashed 2 bikes under a camo tarp. They mounted them without a word and rode hard through the woods, the cold wind stinging their faces. An hour later, they reached a safe house. An abandoned church in a forgotten town 2 hours north of Albany. Inside, Joseph lit a lantern and bolted the door. He sank into a pew and pulled a duffel from behind the pulpit. Keisha dropped to her knees on the floor. Her body ached. Her throat was raw. But she had questions, and no time to rest. She turned to him. "Start from the beginning. No more hiding. I need the truth." He nodded, hands clasped tightly in front of him. "Elridge was born Eli Holloway. We were twins, yes, but we weren't raised together. Our mother gave him up. He was adopted by a wealthy family in New Hampshire. When we reconnected as adults, he was already living under a new name. Thomas Elridge. He'd scrubbed everything from his record. Why? Because he was building something. Something that needed him to be a ghost." Keisha remembered the nickname from news articles. The billionaire with no past. Her father went on. "I was working for a defense contractor. Biometrics, AI pattern modeling. He pulled me into a side project he claimed would save lives, end identity theft, stop human trafficking, root out domestic threats. He called it Project Mirror. But from the start, it felt wrong. He pulled out a worn notebook. Inside were sketches, diagrams of facial tracking software, genetic templates, even partial maps of synthetic tissue growth. Keisha flipped the pages slowly. You helped him build it. He nodded. I did. But I didn't understand what he really wanted until it was too late. He wasn't creating protection, he was creating replacement. The ultimate forgery. Bodies, voices, memories. Everything. A perfect clone of anyone he wanted. Why? To control. Governments, institutions, even small towns. He wanted leverage. Replace a mayor here, a CEO there. Slowly infect the whole system. Not with violence. With silence. No one would ever know. Keisha looked up. And me? You were never part of the plan. But when I backed out, when I tried to leak the project, he made me a liability. I went on the run. Your aunt helped fake my death. But he still watched you. She sat back. And the flash drive? Joseph pulled a second one from his coat pocket. What you uploaded was half the virus. The kill code. This one is the unlock key. It decrypts everything, mirrors funding, its backers, even video evidence of clones in the field. But you have to activate it. Keisha frowned. Where? Where it all began. The mirror core. Hidden in plain sight. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a photo of a building. Glass. Steel. Tall. She stared at it. Elridge HQ, she whispered. Joseph nodded. He's hiding the mirror inside the mirror. That tower is more than just a tech empire. It's a neural cloud hub. And the top floor, his private lab, that's the mainframe. Keisha stood, fire in her veins. Then we go there. Joseph hesitated. It won't be easy. They'll be waiting. I don't care. She looked at the flash drives. One in her pocket. One in her hand. Together, they were the end of the lie. Or the end of her. Suddenly, the lantern flickered. The room dimmed. Joseph grabbed her shoulder. Get down. The front doors of the church exploded inward. Floodlights. Boots. Shouts. Keisha dropped behind a pew as bullets cracked through the air. Her father pulled her toward the altar, shouting, this way. They ran for the back, through a hidden exit he must have prepped in advance. Gunfire behind them. Someone screaming her name. She burst into the cold night, lungs on fire. Joseph followed. They tore through the cemetery, over a crumbling stone wall, and into a cornfield beyond the trees. But as they ran, something slammed into Joseph's back. He dropped like a rag doll. Keisha fell to her knees beside him. Blood. So much blood. No, 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 she gasped. Please. He looked at her with wide, glassy eyes. You still have it? She nodded, choking on tears. Then go, he rasped. Finish it. A light caught her face. Voices grew louder. Keisha ran. She didn't look back. Behind her, her father's body lay in the dirt, his secret finally delivered. And in her hands were the two keys to burn Project Mirror to the ground. Keisha stood outside the Elridge building just past 3 a.m., shivering beneath a long black coat she'd taken from a laundromat an hour earlier. The New York sky above her was thick with clouds, orange with city light. Steam curled from subway grates. The streets were nearly empty. 38 floors of mirrored glass loomed in front of her like a monolith. This was where it began. And where it would end. She pulled the flash drives from her inner pocket. One in each hand. One to destroy the system. One to expose it. Then she looked at the face in the glass doors, her own reflection staring back. Tired. Haunted. But unmistakably alive. She took a deep breath. And walked through the front door pretending to be the very thing they'd tried to turn her into. Security didn't stop her. Not one glance of suspicion. She moved like her clone. Kept her shoulders back. Her expression calm. She mimicked the way it had smiled, how it had stood too still, its eerie precision. The guards nodded as she passed. The front desk receptionist barely glanced up before saying, "You're early tonight." Keisha didn't respond. Just gave a polite nod and stepped onto the elevator. The doors closed. She hit the button for the 38th floor, the restricted level marked only by a blank keycard panel. From her pocket, she pulled the final thing her father had given her. A thin keycard wrapped in a sticky note. For words scribbled in his rushed handwriting. Final pass. Don't blink. She swiped it. The panel beeped green. The elevator lurched upward, rising fast through the heart of the empire that tried to erase her. As the floor count climbed, Keisha closed her eyes. She saw Joseph's face. His blood. The final breath he used to give her this chance. And she swore, this wouldn't be for nothing. Ding. The elevator doors opened. She stepped out into silence. The 38th floor was sterile, futuristic, and cold. Silver walls. Black floors. fluorescent lights that hummed low and steady. And at the center of it all, a massive glass chamber, humming with a soft blue glow. This was the mirror core. A single console waited in front of the chamber, its screen already active. Keisha approached. A prompt pulsed on the display. Identity verification required. Insert primary drive. She slid in the first flash drive, the one she'd uploaded into the clone machine. The kill code. The system word. Then another prompt. Insert authorization key. She hesitated. Then inserted the second flash drive, her father's final gift. The screen went black for a moment. Then, access granted. Unlocking mirror. The room shifted. The chamber pulsed. Across the glass, a hidden screen flickered on. Videos began to play in silence. Security cam footage. Lab experiments. Executives signing off on covert test programs. A spreadsheet of clone deployment schedules across government and corporate sectors. There were dozens of names. Some crossed out. Some not. Keisha's hands shook. She hit the upload button and initiated the data transfer. A countdown appeared. 5 o'clock. 4:59. Somewhere beneath her feet, alarms began to hum. Elridge knew. She ran to the server array. Pried open the casing. Slid the flash drives deep into the hardware slot, no way to eject them without a full shutdown. That bought her 4 more minutes. Then, the elevator behind her dinged. She spun, heart slamming. Elridge stepped out. Alone. No guards. No weapons. Just a black suit and his cold, unreadable eyes. He looked at her with something between sadness and amusement. "You're so much like him," he said. She raised a metal rod from the server casing. "Stay back." "I'm not here to stop you," he said, voice calm. "It's already too late for that." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you want?" "To watch," he said. "The end of a very expensive dream." He stepped into the room, gaze sweeping over the screens as more footage played. More evidence. The mirror project unraveling before them in real time. "You know what the difference is between you and me?" he asked quietly. "I build things. You break them." Keisha tightened her grip on the rod. "You replace people. You erase them. I improve them," he said flatly. "I give the world something better." "No," she said, "you give the world something easier. And you kill everything real to do it." He didn't respond. Just watched the timer tick down. 3:20. 3:19. "Do you think this will save you?" he asked. "When the system goes live, you'll be on every kill list in this hemisphere. Every agency, every contractor I ever touched. They'll all want your head." "I'm not trying to be saved," she said. "You're trying to be a martyr," he scoffed. "I'm trying to be seen." She stepped forward, voice rising. "You made something perfect. But I am flawed. I'm afraid. I'm angry. I make mistakes. And I'm still better than anything you ever built." He stared at her. No anger. No fight. Just silence. Then he said, almost gently, "You're not the first person to say that to me." Keisha didn't know what that meant. And she didn't care. The countdown ticked past 2 o'clock. Then the building shook. She turned back to the screen. One of the backup servers was firing up. "Failsafe," Elridge said quietly. "If the core detects a breach, it tries to upload everything to a private satellite link." Keisha cursed. She scrambled to the terminal, yanking out the backup cables. Pulled free a panel and punched in the root commands. Her hands were shaking, her breathing shallow. 132. 131. Elridge stepped closer, slowly. "I can still offer you something," he said. "You disappear. Walk away. Take a new name. Start over. No one ever finds you. No one ever knows." Keisha didn't move. "I'll wipe every trace," he said. "Just like I wiped mine. That's how I survived." She turned to him. Eyes blazing. "You didn't survive," she said. "You escaped. And that's not the same." The countdown hit 0:45. She pressed her hand to the console. "I saw what my father became trying to stop you. He died knowing what this would cost. I'm not letting that be for nothing." She locked the drives. Set them to auto-upload. Then she pulled the fire alarm. The building howled. Sirens blared. Lights flashed. She ran. Behind her, Elridge didn't chase her. He just watched. As everything he built crumbled. In the stairwell, as she fled down level after level, her phone buzzed. She answered. A scrambled voice on the line, "Keisha. It's Gabriel. I'm outside. East Alley." She reached the exit 5 minutes later, lungs on fire. And there was the van. Gabriel threw open the door. Laverne was inside. Alive. Keisha dove in as gunfire erupted behind her. The van peeled away. And behind them, the top of the Elridge building exploded into light. Keisha watched the news from the back of the van as it sped through the New Jersey Pine Barrens. Gabriel drove like a man possessed, barely speaking, while Laverne sat in the seat beside him, holding Keisha's scraped hand between both of hers like she might float away if she let go. The news anchors hadn't caught up to the full truth, not yet, but the cracks were showing. Breaking: explosion at Elridge Technologies headquarters. Several floors destroyed. Unknown casualties. Company officials have not responded to requests for comment. Insider data leak rumored. Sources say hundreds of confidential files were uploaded to a public ledger moments before power loss at Elridge HQ. Unconfirmed reports suggest a whistleblower is responsible. Theories spreading about identity fraud, cloning, and digital warfare. Federal response imminent. Keisha turned off the screen. The footage was there. The drives had done their job. Joseph's sacrifice had worked. But the world wasn't celebrating. Not yet. The truth was out, but the ones who needed to see it, really see it, were still trying to cover their eyes. Elridge had burned, but the machine behind him hadn't stopped. They had to finish this. And time was running out. Gabriel finally pulled into a safe house 3 hours outside the city. It was an old ranger's cabin, tucked deep inside a state forest no one bothered to maintain anymore. No Wi-Fi. No cell towers. Just trees, silence, and a few terrified birds. They unloaded quickly. Inside, Keisha collapsed onto a couch and stared up at the ceiling. Her whole body buzzed with exhaustion, her limbs like lead. Her shoulder was bruised, her wrist swollen, and her ribs screamed every time she breathed too hard. But her mind was still sprinting. "I need to talk to someone in the press," she said. "Like, tonight. Before this gets spun." Gabriel shook his head. "No good. Most mainstream media won't touch it. Not until they can verify what was in the leak. And the ones who will report it? They'll vanish before morning." Keisha sat up. "Then we go straight to the people. Online. An open drop. We don't know who's watching the chain." "It's too risky," Gabriel warned. Laverne stood at the stove, heating water for tea with a burner. "She's right to try. You can't throw a grenade into a building and then walk away hoping someone else cleans it up." Gabriel turned toward her, frustrated. "You think I don't know that? I've been part of this since it was a sketch on a whiteboard. I watched Elridge test this tech on people who trusted him. Keisha just blew a hole in the wall. She needs to hide, not stand in the light." "I'm done hiding," Keisha said, voice quiet but unshakable. "He replaced people. He erased lives. And no one even knows how far it went. The names on that drive, have you looked?" Gabriel hesitated. Keisha pulled the burner laptop from her bag and opened the decrypted files. Dozens of names. Then hundreds. Some labeled, confirmed replaced. Others, in progress. One section marked, terminated. And beneath that? Gabriel North. Keisha looked up at him. He stared at the screen. Then laughed. Just once. A bitter, hollow sound. "I knew they wrote me off. Didn't think they filed the death certificate already." Laverne stepped in. "If they think you're dead, use it." Gabriel's eyes narrowed. "You mean go back in?" Keisha nodded slowly. "If they don't expect you, we use that." Laverne turned to Keisha. "And what will you do?" "I make the world feel this," Keisha said. "We don't just show the files. We show them who was taken. Their faces. Their stories." She looked between them. "You said people won't listen until they believe it's real. So let's make it personal." Gabriel frowned. "You're not talking about a leak." "No," she said. "I'm talking about a funeral." 2 nights later, Keisha stood on a rooftop in Brooklyn with the skyline behind her and a camera pointed at her face. They were streaming to a dead network she and Gabriel had hijacked from an old pirate radio site. It was glitchy, unstable, and probably monitored, but it would get through to someone. Laverne stood just off camera, watching with folded arms. Gabriel sat at the laptop, managing the feed. And Keisha spoke. "My name is Keisha Holloway. 3 weeks ago, I worked in a diner in Georgia. My biggest worry was making rent." She looked directly into the lens. "Now I'm here to tell you something unbelievable, and completely true." She took a breath. "I was almost replaced. Not metaphorically. Literally." She uploaded images, footage of her clone, the chamber, the files. She told them about Project Mirror. About Elridge. About the people stolen and erased. "I saw my father murdered twice. Once in the news. Once for real. I watched him give his life to stop this." Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. "So I'm asking you. Whoever you are. Wherever you are. Help me show this to the world. Don't let them bury it. Don't let them bury us." She clicked the final file. It broadcasted live. A video of Elridge himself. In a lab. Smiling calmly into the camera. "We don't need to kill anyone," he said. We just have to replace the idea of them. People trust what they see. All we need to do is give them something more believable. The screen went black. Then the feed crashed. Gabriel yanked the plug. We're hot. They're tracing. Keisha was already moving. They had 20 seconds. But it was enough. Because in those 20 seconds, over 10,000 people saw the stream. Enough to start a spark. Enough to make them look. They fled into the night. Behind them, the feed they'd used was wiped. The site shut down. All traces scrubbed. But the video had already been downloaded. Mirrored. Shared. Spoken aloud. And Elridge? He went silent. No appearance. No statement. No denial. For the first time, he was on the run. The world didn't change overnight. But it shook. The morning after Keisha's video dropped, hashtags erupted across social media. Hashtag Project Mirror. Hashtag Who is Real. Hashtag Keisha Holloway. People were scared. Some were furious. Others dismissed it as an elaborate hoax. But the footage spread faster than anyone could stop it. Every time it was deleted, someone reposted it. Versions in different languages. Slowed down clips. Reaction videos. Conspiracy forums lit up. Journalists tried to verify identities. Some of the names in the leak were already dead. Others were mysteriously unavailable for comment. And one by one, the dots began to connect. Keisha watched it unfold from a safe house in Buffalo, hidden in the basement of an old bakery. They'd moved twice in 48 hours. Gabriel insisted they keep moving every 6. Laverne barely slept. Neither did Keisha. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because there was one name in the files she hadn't shared with the world. Not yet. And that was the name of the final replacement. A man no one dared to question. Because he sat in the highest office in the country. President Jonathan Wells. Gabriel paced the floor above while Keisha stared at the printout in her lap. Jonathan Wells. Age, 64. Elected in a landslide 3 years ago. Publicly neutral. Privately connected to dozens of shell companies, all funded by Elridge. She whispered aloud, "How do you replace a president?" Laverne leaned in. "You don't. You build him." Keisha turned to her. "I'm saying," Laverne continued, "maybe Wells was never himself to begin with. Maybe he was one of the first. The prototype." "Too old," Keisha said. "The tech wasn't there yet." Gabriel's voice echoed down the stairs. "Unless they didn't clone him. Unless they installed him." Keisha blinked. "Meaning?" "Meaning they took a man with no real past. No roots. Gave him a name. A history. Fed him to the media in a war-torn election year. Made him a symbol. America wanted someone calm, polished, a leader who wouldn't shake the table." Gabriel came down the stairs holding a tablet. He set it in front of Keisha. Someone like Elridge's first fully synthetic behavioral model. No past. No family. Just a spotless record and a perfect smile. Keisha stared at the screen. A video played, Jonathan Wells, giving his first campaign speech. Behind him, a man in a suit stepped off the podium. Barely visible. She froze the frame. Zoomed in. It was Elridge. Standing 10 feet behind the future president. Keisha whispered, "It wasn't about technology." Gabriel nodded. "It was about control." And then her phone buzzed. An encrypted number they hadn't used in days. She answered, expecting static. But the voice on the other end was low. Firm. Familiar. "Keisha Holloway. I'm calling from inside the Department of Defense." She froze. The voice continued, "I believe you. But you've started something you don't understand. And there's something you need to see." Gabriel grabbed the phone from her, switched it to speaker. "Why should we trust you?" he asked. "Because I have the original Wells," the man said. Silence. Then Keisha spoke. "Where?" "Alive. Held in black site containment since 2019. Replaced just before the election." Gabriel swore under his breath. Laverne covered her mouth. The man continued. "You need proof? I'll give it to you. But you'll have to come to me. Tomorrow. 5 a.m. Langley, Southgate. No weapons. No followers." The line went dead. Keisha sat still. The real Wells was alive. That was the final card. But they couldn't just walk into Langley. Gabriel turned to her. "It's a trap." Keisha looked at the printout. The names. The system behind it. "Maybe," she said. "But it's the only way to prove everything." Laverne spoke quietly. "You go in there, and you may not come back." Keisha looked up. "I don't care." The next morning, Keisha stood outside the Langley gate as dawn broke over Virginia. No makeup. No disguise. Just truth in her eyes and the drive still around her neck. Gabriel and Laverne waited half a mile back in a rental car, engine running. If she wasn't out in 20 minutes, they'd vanish again. But this time, she wasn't going to run. The gate opened. 2 men stepped out in civilian clothes. One nodded. "Follow us." She walked between them. Her footsteps silent on the concrete. They led her deep into the facility, down corridors lit by soft blue lights, until they reached a steel elevator. It descended so far her ears popped. Then it opened. And inside the room, behind a thick pane of reinforced glass, sat an old man in a hospital gown. Pale. Gray-haired. Thin. Keisha stepped forward slowly. The man turned. And she saw it. The same face. But older. Softer. Human. Not the man on TV. Not the one who had shaken her hand as a child on a school field trip. Not the man who stood behind press podiums talking about unity. This man looked like someone who'd been buried alive. He looked at her. "You're her," he said quietly. "The girl who didn't go away." Keisha pressed her hand to the glass. "You're President Wells?" He nodded slowly. "I was." She stared at him, breath caught in her throat. Then she pulled the chain from her neck and held up the flash drive. "This ends now." And behind her, the guards raised their guns. One of them spoke softly. "Not quite." The glass slid open. And the real trap began. The moment the glass partition slid open, Keisha's instinct screamed. She turned, too late. The 2 guards raised their weapons, not aiming to kill, just control. "Hands where we can see them," one barked. Behind them, another man entered. Clean suit. Soft shoes. No name tag. But Keisha recognized him. Not from TV. From a photo her father had shown her once, with a warning. Darren Keene. Former DARPA liaison. Current intelligence consultant. Quiet architect of Project Mirror's classified expansion. He smiled faintly, like they were old friends. "You made it further than we expected," he said. Keisha didn't move. "You're behind this." "No," he said. "I'm what's left when the designers run. When Elridge panics. When people like you start pushing stones off cliffs they don't understand." He nodded toward the man behind the glass, the real Wells, who sat silently now, staring into nothing. "Do you know what it costs to hold on to a narrative this big, this long?" Keene asked. "The electricity alone, never mind the loyalty." Keisha's hand clutched the flash drive tighter. "You replaced the President of the United States." He shrugged. "We guided the narrative." He was unstable. Scared. Too prone to conscience. Elridge saw it coming. "We needed someone clean. So we built one." He played the part. The world clapped. Keisha's voice cracked. "You locked a man in a cell for 3 years. Correction, we kept a high-risk national asset safe while we stabilized the system." She stared at him, disgust rising like bile. "You don't even believe your own lies." Keene smiled again. "You're a smart girl, Keisha. That's why I'm offering you something rare." He stepped closer. "You've become a face now. A symbol. You could use that. Join us. Guide the next generation. We could give you your father's seat. Improve the tools. Lead the integration." Her breath caught. "Integration," she echoed. Keene's voice lowered. "No more clones. No more replacing. Instead, blending. Real and artificial. Seamless augmentation of memory, skill, appearance. We stop replacing people, and start upgrading them." Keisha stared at him. "You're asking me to join the system that murdered my father." "I'm asking you to lead it," he said. "You want to survive? Change the story. Make it yours." She looked at the real Wells, skin hanging loose from his frame, eyes wet with exhaustion. Then she looked at the guards, hands steady on their rifles. She slipped the flash drive into her back pocket. And said, quietly, "Okay." Keene's eyes twitched. "Okay?" Keisha nodded. "I'll do it. I'll lead it. If it stops the erasures. If we build transparency into it. Give people choice." Keene tilted his head. "Choice is inefficient." Keisha smiled. "So are wildfires." Keene blinked. That was her cue. From inside her coat, she pressed a hidden button on a second burner phone. In the car outside, Gabriel's laptop lit up. Signal received. Go. Inside Langley's firewalls, a second feed went live. Not through the mirror servers. Through the original drive. Keisha's acceptance had triggered a cascade, a master key to the darkest layer of Project Mirror, files too encrypted to crack until now. Gabriel had the rest of the data. And he'd just leaked the final packet to every major press outlet on the continent. Names. Footage. Statements. Audio recordings. And one final bombshell. The DNA scan of the real Wells, compared to the current president. Undeniable. Unedited. Unspinnable. Inside the room, Keene's phone vibrated. Then again. Then again. He frowned, pulled it from his pocket. Screen after screen. Notifications. Alerts. Security flags. He looked up at Keisha. She was already backing away. What did you do? Keisha held up her empty hands. Your mistake was thinking I came here for a deal. Keen lunged for her, but one of the guards stepped in front of him, hesitating. What's happening, sir? Keen's face twisted. Keisha spoke loudly, to the room. Ask him. Ask him why the man in that cell has the president's fingerprints. Why there are hundreds of names in that database labeled terminated. Why you've been working for a lie. The second guard looked between Keen and Keisha, confusion dawning. Keen backed toward the door. He pressed a button on his watch. But the lights didn't dim. Instead, they brightened. The emergency lockdown failed. Keisha heard the buzz of security boots outside, too many to count. A breach response. Someone inside had flipped. Maybe one of the guards. Maybe someone watching the broadcast. Maybe someone finally woke up. Keen realized too late, the system wasn't airtight. Keisha stepped to the glass. Wells looked up at her, his voice raspy but clear. Thank you, he whispered. Then he looked at Keen. Good luck explaining this to Congress. 2 hours later, Keisha sat in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a foil blanket. Laverne held her close. Gabriel stood outside, watching news vans arrive like crows. Breaking, allegations of political replacement program explode inside CIA. Project Mirror real? Data suggests top officials may be artificial replacements. President silent amid scandal, calls grow for emergency hearings. Keisha didn't smile. She just exhaled. Hard. It wasn't over. There were still names on the list they hadn't found. Still clones in circulation. Still agencies trying to erase what couldn't be unseen. But the truth was loose. And she was still standing. For the first time in weeks, Keisha closed her eyes. And when she opened them, she saw sunlight. Real. Untouched. The tribunal was held in Geneva. Not in secret. Live. Broadcasted. Public. After the collapse of Elridge Technologies and the exposure of Project Mirror, the world demanded accountability. Governments scrambled to distance themselves. Tech giants issued public denials. But the documents Keisha and Gabriel released were airtight. The replacements were real. The programs had existed. And people, real people, had died for it. Keisha sat at the center of the marble chamber, dressed simply in black. Not as a witness. Not as a suspect. As a survivor. One by one, the architects of Mirror were paraded into the room. Men and women in pressed suits, stripped of titles. Former intelligence heads. Tech company executives. Lobbyists. Think tank operatives. All claiming ignorance or misunderstanding. The evidence said otherwise. Keisha watched it all, stone-faced. Until the final name on the list was read aloud. Thomas Elridge. But the seat remained empty. The speaker, a neutral UN prosecutor, cleared his throat. Mr. Elridge is still missing. His last verified sighting was prior to the destruction of his New York headquarters. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Keisha said nothing. But inside, her stomach turned. Because the day after her tribunal statement had gone viral, she'd received something unexpected. A white envelope. No return address. Inside, a single photo. A grainy still from a security camera. A cafe in Argentina. Elridge. Sitting at a table. Alive. Smiling. Watching. That night, Keisha stood on a balcony overlooking Lake Geneva. The air was cold, sharp with alpine wind. Below, the city glittered like a sea of stars. Gabriel joined her. You okay? She didn't answer right away. Then, no. But I'm not broken. He leaned on the railing beside her. They're going to call you a hero. I'm not one, she said. I was just the one they didn't erase in time. He glanced at her. You still have the drive? She reached into her coat and pulled it out. The same one she'd carried from her father's hands. The same one that exposed the system. Of course, she said. But not just this. She handed him a second item. A flashcard. Paper. Not digital. On it, a handwritten list. Names. Dozens. Not from the files. From her memory. Some of them weren't in the database, she said. I think Elridge kept some parts off the grid. Gabriel frowned. Meaning? Meaning Project Mirror wasn't the top of the pyramid, she said. It was just one branch. One operation. There are others. She turned to him, voice quiet but fierce. I'm going to find them. He hesitated. Keisha, you already exposed the biggest covert identity manipulation system in modern history. You don't have to keep going. She met his eyes. Yes, I do. Because every time they rebuild in silence, someone like me gets buried. Someone like my father dies alone. She stepped back inside. Behind her, the wind carried a scrap of paper off the balcony. It danced through the cold air, drifted into the lake, and sank without sound. 1 week later. Keisha stepped into a dusty apartment on the edge of Lisbon, Portugal. No lights. Just a weak radio crackling in a kitchen. A man stood in the shadows, wearing a worn leather jacket and a cap pulled low. He didn't turn around. But he said, "You got this far." Keisha closed the door. "You're not surprised." The man chuckled. "You weren't supposed to be real. That's what made you dangerous." She walked forward. "I know what mirror was. But I think you know what comes next." He turned. He didn't look like Elridge. Didn't look like anyone she'd seen on a screen. But somehow, she recognized him. Not from a photo. From the eyes. Cold. Unblinking. He smiled faintly. Elridge was the product. I was the pitch. Keisha stopped. "And your name?" He leaned against the table. "They called me a consultant. A strategist. Sometimes I went by Halbrich. Sometimes Doyle. The truth is, names are just passwords. I'm not the first. And I'm definitely not the last." She clenched her jaw. "So what are you?" The man looked at her, eyes dead calm. "I'm the part of the machine that learned to wait." She reached for her phone. But he was already moving. Not attacking. Just walking. Out the back door. "Tell them what you want," he said over his shoulder. "They'll forget again soon enough." And then he was gone. Keisha didn't chase him. Not because she was afraid. But because she knew this never ends with one man. Not Elridge. Not Wells. Not even the man with no name. Power isn't destroyed. It shifts. It adapts. And it waits for silence. But she wasn't going to be quiet. Not now. Not ever. She sat down in the abandoned apartment and opened her laptop. She opened the encrypted folder she'd never shared with anyone, not even Gabriel. Inside were new files. Anonymous tips. Whispers. Disconnected code fragments. The beginnings of something else. Something worse. Not clones. Not replacements. But rewrites. And at the top of the folder, a single name blinked in red. Project Lazarus. Keisha smiled grimly. Let them come. The girl they tried to erase was gone. Now, only the truth remained.